Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel. The gentle hum of Vex's cloaking device settled into background noise as she adjusted the atmospheric filter covering her nasal passages. Earth's oxygen content was tolerable but required some modification for her Solarian physiology. Her iridescent skin, which shifted between blue and purple depending on her emotional state, was currently hidden beneath a holographic projector that gave her the appearance of a human woman with copper skin and dark hair. Field anthropologist Vexa, this is your final warning, Commander Drell's voice crackled through her neural implant. Unauthorized exploration violates Protocol 37B. Return to base immediately. Acknowledged, Commander, Vexa responded, knowing full well she would do no such thing. 3 months of sanctioned observation from a distance had yielded only superficial understanding of human culture. The Solarian High Council wanted comprehensive reports before initiating first contact, but their restrictive protocols made meaningful research impossible. Besides, something about these humans fascinated her beyond academic interest: their contradictions, their creativity, their capacity for both destruction and profound beauty. Her scanner indicated minimal security around the botanical research facility at the edge of town. Perfect for a first close encounter with a human environment. The greenhouse glass shimmered in the moonlight as she disabled the simple alarm system and slipped inside. The humid air inside the greenhouse felt wonderful against her skin, reminding her of home. Vexa deactivated her holographic disguise to better absorb the moisture. Plants from across Earth filled the vast space, meticulously arranged and labeled. She moved from specimen to specimen, recording data with her ocular implants, completely absorbed in discovery. You're definitely not from the university. The voice startled her so badly she knocked over a potted seedling. Spinning around, Vexa faced a human male, tall, with warm brown skin, curious eyes, and an expression that seemed more intrigued than frightened. Vexa fumbled to reactivate her holographic disguise, but the projector malfunctioned, flickering between her true appearance and her human facade. Sorry about that, the man said, approaching slowly. Didn't mean to scare you. I'm Jace Merritt, lead researcher here. He gestured around the greenhouse, and you are clearly not from around here. Protocol dictated immediate retreat. Contact with an aware human without proper authorization could result in her permanent reassignment. Yet something in his steady gaze held her in place. I am Vexa, she replied, deciding honesty might be her best option. I am studying your world. To her surprise, Jace laughed. Well, you picked an interesting corner of it. Most aliens in movies go for government buildings or military bases. You broke into a botanical research facility. Plants reveal much about a civilization, Vexa responded, relaxing slightly. Your relationship with your environment reflects your cultural values. Jace nodded thoughtfully. Never considered that. He approached a damaged specimen. This one's from the Amazon. Nearly extinct now, because we didn't value it properly. Something in his tone, regret, perhaps, resonated with Vexa. On Sealer, the bond between people and environment was sacred. May I, she asked, approaching the plant. Jace stepped aside, watching curiously as Vexa placed her hand near the withered leaves. A soft glow emanated from her palm, and the plant straightened slightly, its color deepening. Photosynthetic enhancement, she explained. A simple biological energy transfer. That's incredible, Jace whispered, moving closer. Are all your people connected to plants this way? We are connected to all living things, Vexa said. Which is why I'm here. To understand. Their eyes met, and Vexa felt an unexpected flutter in her secondary heartbeat, a physiological response her training hadn't prepared her for. This proximity, this connection with a human violated every protocol she was bound to follow. And yet, as Jace carefully reached out to examine her still glowing hand, she knew she would return tomorrow, and the day after. Some discoveries were worth the risk of breaking every rule. For the third night in a row, Vexa disabled the Solarian outpost security sensors along her quarters' exterior wall. Commander Drell had doubled surveillance after her unauthorized excursion, apparently unconvinced by her explanation of atmospheric sampling malfunction. Slipping through the perimeter barrier, she felt a flutter of what humans might call guilt, but stronger was the inexplicable pull toward the botanical facility where Jace would be waiting. You came back, he said, his face brightening when she materialized at the greenhouse door. Tonight she brought sampling equipment as pretense, though they both knew her visits had evolved beyond scientific curiosity. My research remains incomplete, Vexa replied, her skin shifting toward a deeper violet, the Solarian equivalent of a blush. She'd explained their physiological color shifting to Jace during her second visit, finding his fascination with her biology surprisingly pleasant. Jace gestured to a makeshift table he'd arranged between exotic flowering plants. I brought dinner. Thought you might want to try Earth food that won't poison you. He'd taken her dietary restrictions seriously after she'd explained that certain Earth proteins would disrupt her digestive system. You researched Solarian-compatible nutrition? Vexa asked, genuinely touched. Just basic chemistry, he said with a shrug, though his smile suggested he'd spent considerable time on it. Figured if you're studying us, I could study you a little too. Their conversation flowed more easily each time, from scientific exchange to personal histories. Jace described growing up in coastal California, his parents' separation, his decision to pursue environmental restoration rather than more lucrative corporate research. Vexa shared sanitized versions of her home world, the floating archipelagos, the decade-long education process, her competitive selection for the Earth mission. So you're like an elite anthropologist, Jace concluded, watching her taste a slice of mango with delighted curiosity. Breaking all the rules to hang out with the primitive human. Vexa's skin flickered between purple and blue. You are hardly primitive. Different, yes. Your species processes emotion and logic simultaneously rather than in separate cognitive phases. It's fascinating. Is that your scientific assessment? Jace asked, leaning forward. Partially, she admitted. Their hands rested inches apart on the table. But I find myself using subjective measures more frequently in your presence. When his fingers brushed against hers, Vexa experienced a sensation she had no scientific terminology for, a current that seemed to flow between them, neither entirely physical nor purely emotional. Her training demanded she catalog the reaction, analyze it objectively. Instead, she simply allowed herself to feel it. I should warn you, she said softly, contact between our species is expressly forbidden, not just by my mission parameters but by Solarian law. Jace's fingers intertwined with hers. Earth doesn't even know your people exist yet, so we don't have laws against it. Guess I'm the lucky one. Breaking protocol could mean exile for me, Vexa continued, yet she didn't withdraw her hand. Then we make sure they don't, Jace said simply. I'm good at keeping secrets. The question is whether whatever this is between us is worth the risk. The air between them seemed charged with possibility. Vexa had studied human intimacy through observation posts and data feeds, clinical and detached. Nothing had prepared her for the reality of Jace's gaze, the proximity of his body, the strange harmony she felt in his presence. I have no comparable reference point, she admitted. This connection defies my analytical framework. Jace laughed softly. That might be the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. When he leaned forward to brush his lips against hers, a human gesture she'd only observed from afar, Vexa's scientific detachment dissolved completely. Her skin illuminated in patterns of bright phosphorescence, a Solarian response to extreme emotional states she hadn't experienced since adolescence. That's new, Jace whispered, his face illuminated by her glow. An involuntary response, Vexa explained, embarrassed. I should control it better. Don't, he said, touching her luminescent cheek. It's beautiful. As she left the greenhouse hours later, Vexa knew with certainty that her mission parameters had been irreparably compromised. What had begun as unauthorized research had evolved into something her people had no protocol for, something that would forever change her understanding of both humans and herself. Field anthropologist Vexa, the Council demands your immediate return to Sealer. Commander Drell's tone left no room for negotiation. Your neural implant shows irregular patterns consistent with prolonged direct contact with humans. This constitutes a Class 1 violation. Vexa maintained her professional composure despite the panic rising within her. Commander, my research requires contextual immersion. The data I've gathered will be evaluated by others, Drell interrupted. Your departure shuttle arrives in 48 Earth hours. I expect full compliance. The transmission ended, leaving Vexa alone with an impossible choice. 2 full cycles of seasons on Earth had fundamentally altered her. The thought of returning to Sealer's rigid hierarchy, never seeing Jace again, filled her with a despair that turned her skin a dull gray. When she reached their meeting place, no longer the greenhouse but a small cabin Jace had rented in the mountains, she found him packing anxiously. "Thank God you're here," he said, pulling her into an embrace. "We have a problem." Two men in government vehicles were asking questions at the research center today about unusual energy signatures, unauthorized access to the facility. "About me?" Vexa felt her secondary heart stutter. "They know about us." "They know something," Jace confirmed. "I packed essentials and left work early, told them I was taking personal leave." He studied her ashen complexion. "What's wrong?" "Your color." "I've been ordered to return to Sealer," she said quietly. "But I cannot, will not, leave you." The implications settled between them. Staying meant permanent exile from her world. For Jace, continuing their relationship meant becoming a fugitive on his own planet. "Then we hide," he said decisively, "till we figure something out." That night in the small mountain cabin, with snow beginning to fall outside, their relationship transformed again. What had been exploratory touches and discovered sensitivities became something more profound. Vexa deactivated her holographic disguise completely, allowing Jace to see the intricate bioluminescent patterns that flowed across her true form. "You're sure about this?" Jace asked, his hands hovering just above the ethereal glow of her skin. "I've analyzed everything," Vexa whispered. "We are different, but not incompatible." Their coming together was both alien and instinctively familiar, his warmth against her cooler physiology, her luminescence responding to his touch. Where human intimacy followed predictable patterns, their encounter required discovery, communication, adaptation. Vexa found herself experiencing sensations her species had no terminology for, her scientific mind finally surrendering completely to experience. Afterward, lying together as snow continued falling outside, Jace traced the now softly pulsing patterns on her arm. "I never imagined falling in love would involve interstellar exile," he said. "Love?" Vexa repeated, testing the human word against the complex emotions flowing through her. "Yes, that approximates the neural emotional state I experience with you." Jace laughed softly. "Someday you'll just say, 'I love you too,' but I'll take the xenobiologist version for now." Their momentary peace shattered with the sound of vehicles approaching on the snow-covered road. Vexa's enhanced senses detected multiple life forms surrounding the cabin. "They found us," she whispered, her skin darkening with fear. "Both of them, your government and my people." Jace pulled her closer. "Then we face them together. No more hiding." As flashlights swept across the windows and voices called out demands for surrender, Vexa knew they had reached the moment where every rule would either be broken forever or enforced at the cost of everything that mattered. The cabin door splintered under the combined force of human and Solarian technology. Vexa stood beside Jace, her holographic disguise abandoned, her true form glowing defiantly in the darkness. Four human agents in tactical gear entered first, followed by 3 Solarians, whose presence on Earth represented a shocking protocol breach. "Step away from the human," anthropologist Vexa ordered Krell, her former mentor. "This situation can still be contained." Simultaneously, a human agent addressed Jace, "Dr. Merritt, you're being detained under the extraterrestrial encounter protocol. That entity beside you is classified as an unknown biological threat." "She's not a threat," Jace said firmly, his hand still intertwined with Vexa's. "And I'm not stepping away from her." What followed was a tense standoff that gradually evolved into unprecedented negotiation. The humans, apparently part of a classified government division aware of potential extraterrestrial contact, had been monitoring unusual energy signatures for months. The Solarians, having detected Vexa's prolonged separation from the observation post, had broken their own non-intervention protocols to retrieve her. "Your actions have forced first contact 50 years ahead of schedule," Krell informed Vexa coldly. "The Council will hold you responsible for any negative consequences." "Perhaps accelerated contact is exactly what both our worlds need," Vexa countered. "Your observational data is sterile, incomplete. Real understanding requires connection." The human agent in charge, Director Harlow, watched this exchange with calculated interest. "So your people have been studying us for how long?" "Longer than your current civilization has existed," Krell admitted reluctantly. The revelation led to hours of tense discussion. As dawn broke over the mountains, Jace and Vexa found themselves in the extraordinary position of mediating between representatives of two worlds, neither of which had officially acknowledged the other's existence until this moment. In a rare moment alone, as the officials consulted separately, Jace pulled Vexa close. "This isn't exactly how I imagined meeting your family," he whispered against her luminescent skin. "Nor I yours," she replied with a smile that briefly turned her color to warm gold. "But perhaps our union will serve greater purpose than just our happiness." "Our happiness is purpose enough," Jace insisted, kissing her in a way that had become wonderfully familiar despite their biological differences. "Everything else is just politics." When they rejoined the impromptu diplomatic session, Director Harlow delivered their ultimatum. "Dr. Merritt faces charges of harboring an unauthorized extraterrestrial entity unless we can negotiate official recognition between our worlds, with established protocols for individuals like yourselves. The Council will never permit ongoing contact between our species," Krell insisted, "especially not intimate relations." The Solarian's skin rippled with distaste. "Then perhaps the Council requires new perspective," Vexa challenged. "Our peoples will meet eventually. Better through understanding and cooperation than fear." As negotiations continued through the day, Vexa and Jace found moments to affirm their commitment, physically and emotionally, each touch a promise that whatever diplomatic resolution emerged, their personal bond would remain unbroken. "If they separate us," Vexa whispered during one such moment, her bioluminescence synchronizing with Jace's heartbeat as they lay together, "I will find my way back to you, across whatever distance they impose." "They won't separate us," Jace promised. "We're making history here, the first official human-Solarian couple. They're going to need us to figure this whole thing out." His confidence wasn't entirely misplaced. By nightfall, a preliminary agreement had been reached, one that would require approval from higher authorities on both sides, but which acknowledged the reality that two worlds had irrevocably collided, brought together by the most unexpected of catalysts, love between species. 6 months after the standoff at the mountain cabin, Vexa stood beside Jace in a chamber that represented unprecedented cooperation between Earth and Sealer. The newly established interspecies diplomatic compound had been constructed in neutral territory, a remote island ceded by Earth government specifically for this purpose. "Are you ready?" Jace asked, straightening the ceremonial Solarian attire he wore as a symbol of cultural exchange. The outfit had been modified for human physiology, just as Vexa's traditional bonding garment had been adapted to accommodate her need to occasionally manifest her natural bioluminescence. "I have been preparing for this moment since we first met," Vexa replied, her skin shifting through subtle patterns of blue and violet that, as Jace had learned, represented profound emotional contentment. "Though I never imagined our personal union would become an interplanetary diplomatic event." Around them gathered an unlikely assembly, human diplomatic representatives, military officials, scientists, alongside a delegation of Solarians who had reluctantly accepted accelerated contact with Earth. What had begun as a crisis had evolved, through stubborn negotiation, into the first formal alliance between worlds. Director Harlow approached them. "The Council representatives have arrived. They're still not entirely pleased about this ceremony, but they've accepted the political necessity." "By which you mean they've realized humans would make contact with other galactic species with or without their blessing," Jace translated with a grin. "Precisely," Vexa agreed. "My people prefer controlled engagement to chaotic discovery." The ceremony that followed blended traditions from both worlds. Vows were exchanged in both languages, binding Vexa and Jace not just to each other but to their new roles as cultural ambassadors. Their union would serve as both test case and template for future interspecies relations. Yet beneath the diplomatic significance remained the simple truth of two beings who had defied every expectation and prohibition to build something neither world had imagined possible. "The Council wishes me to express that while your union remains technically a violation of Protocol 37b, announced the Solarian High Minister with characteristic formality, it is hereby granted special exemption status in recognition of evolving interplanetary relations." Jace leaned close to Vexa. "I think that's their way of saying congratulations." "For my people, it is practically effusive," Vexa whispered back, her color briefly flashing to amused pink. Later, as celebration continued around them, they slipped away to the private quarters designed specifically for their unique requirements, environmental controls that could shift between Earth and Solarian norms, technology from both worlds seamlessly integrated. "Do you regret any of it?" Jace asked as they stood on their private balcony overlooking the ocean. "Giving up your position, risking exile, changing the course of interplanetary relations." Vex's luminescence synchronized with the rhythm of the waves below, her natural light dancing across Jace's features. In Solarian culture, we have a concept called pivotal divergence, a moment when breaking established patterns creates entirely new possibilities. Her hands traced familiar paths across his body, igniting responses that had become no less thrilling with familiarity. You were my pivotal divergence. Their coming together that night carried the weight of all they had risked and all they had gained, two bodies from different worlds finding harmony in their differences rather than obstacles. What had once been hesitant exploration had evolved into intimate knowledge, each having learned the unique geography of the other's pleasure. The council wanted my final research report today, Vexa murmured afterward, nestled against Jace's warmth, on human Solarian compatibility. And what did the distinguished anthropologist conclude? Jace asked, tracing patterns along her luminescent skin. That some discoveries transcend scientific documentation, she replied, her color shifting to the deep violet that Jace had come to recognize as her expression of love. And that the most valuable knowledge comes not from observation, but from connection. As they drifted to sleep in each other's arms, representatives of worlds that had evolved light years apart, Vexa reflected on the warning she had received before her mission began: observe the humans, but never touch them. In defying that command, she had not only found personal fulfillment but had opened a door between worlds that would never again be closed. Some rules, it seemed, existed only to reveal the greater truths waiting beyond them.